Thank you, TaP. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Dwayne Shoemate, and I'm the State Coordinator of Employment and Community Engagement for the Division of Developmental Disabilities within the Department of Mental Health. And I'd just like to thank everybody for their interest in learning more about Missouri Talent Pathways, a solution to the workforce crisis that many of our providers have been experiencing throughout the last several years. Today's agenda, just to provide a little bit of an overview, we will start with welcome and introductions. Then we'll have a brief history of how we developed a registered apprenticeship, a little bit of an overview as to why we selected a registered apprenticeship as a solution in helping increase workforce opportunities for direct support professionals. We'll give just a little bit of an overview of what a registered apprenticeship is. Then we'll get into the nuts and bolts of Missouri Talent Pathways, which is the registered apprenticeship for the certified direct support professional. Then we do have a couple of partner agencies with us today who will provide a little bit of context and overview of how they are able to work and collaborate with us. And then we will definitely spend hopefully a good 15-20 minutes addressing any questions and answers, as I anticipate there being several as we go through this process. And then lastly, we'll conclude with a couple of quotes from the governor, Director Bax, as well as Director Hoon, and just reviewing some of the social media play that we've gotten with Missouri Talent Pathways. So before we go any further, I'd like to first introduce, I'm just going to ask folks to kind of unmute as I go across our panelist screen in the order that I see them. So Michael Flynn, could you introduce yourself?
Hello, it's Michael Flynn. I work with Veterans Education for the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. We're the group that approves programs for veterans to be able to use their GI Bill benefits. Veterans can use those benefits for a lot of programs, including on-the-job training and apprenticeship. So we're really excited to be able to work with all of you and Dwayne in his office on this new initiative, and think that's going to offer some really good options for veterans as they start a new career.
All right, thank you, Trace. And Suzanne?
Hello, this is Suzanne Richards. Thanks so much for inviting me today. And I work for the Department of Higher Education and Workforce Development. I'm actually an apprenticeship coordinator, which means I travel the state and I work with companies. I work with chambers of commerce. I work with schools, anyone interested in following the registered apprenticeship model. So thanks for letting me join.
All right, thank you, Suzanne. And last and certainly not least, Trace.
Hi, I'm Trace Lawfrey. I work for the United States Department of Labor Office of Apprenticeship. I provide guidance and consultation in setting up the programs with potential sponsors. I also provide oversight for the administration of the program and the rapid system, which we'll talk a little bit more about later. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Trace. And with that, we will jump right into the presentation. So first off, I just want to provide a little bit of a brief history. Although we're sitting here in 2022, the genesis of this registered apprenticeship program actually first occurred in early 2019 through the division as we were receiving results of the 2018 National Core Indicator Staff Stability Survey. Some of the things that we began to realize in those statistics that were completed by both the state programs as well as many of our contracted community-based organizations was that, as you can see on the left, that we have 55% of direct support professionals as of December 2018, 55% of those individuals had been employed less than 2 years. And on the right, you can see that of those direct support professionals who separated from work, 41% of them had been on the job for less than 6 months. So obviously that contributes to a high turnover rate. In Missouri, that was a 53.4% turnover rate of direct support professionals and a full-time vacancy rate of 6.6%. With that type of a volatility in the workforce, it obviously creates a lot of impacts and a lot of challenges for our provider agencies, for the families and individuals who receive services through our programs. So from that survey, as a division, we really started looking at what type of workforce solutions and strategies could we begin to explore. As we see on the next slide, from that survey also what we learned was in Missouri that the median hourly wage of a new direct support professional at that time was $11 an hour. And the starting wage was at $10 an hour. Both of those were below national averages. But as many of you all on today's call know, you could be working at Dollar General or McDonald's under much less challenging circumstances, making more money than that. So obviously the wages at some level have contributed to a lot of the workforce shortages that we're experiencing. There are many consequences for that DSP shortage. From the individual perspective, they're now working with a staff person who's having to work long hours, many times pulling double and triple shifts. That amount of extra work, that fatigue leads to the propensity to potentially make mistakes, be a little bit less tolerant in stressful circumstances and situations. When you have a lot of turnover of staff, individuals themselves may be experiencing signs and symptoms of illness that may be missed or overlooked because you have new staff people who are unfamiliar with that individual. Obviously, when you have a lot of volatility and turnover of staff with very limited experience, that also means that a lot of times there's limited training, limited expertise, which results in individuals having potentially less independence, less opportunity to achieve their goals and outcomes, and also potentially less social interaction. And then obviously for the individual, the more staff that they're having to work with, it creates ongoing difficulty with them being able to know and develop a trusted relationship with the direct support professional. For families, this impacts in many ways. When staff's not available, many families are having to take time off of their jobs in order to be able to provide care for their children. Families themselves aren't able to engage in their own personal social activities because they're feeling more fatigued, more burnout. They themselves begin to have stress and health issues, and having to provide care that is a challenge in being able to be delivered through our programs and services. For our community-based organizations, obviously there's tremendous challenge in just being able to recruit qualified applicants. It's tough to implement a lot of business acumen practices because of having an ever-evolving door of staff, which also contributes to a lot of increased cost in training, increased cost of onboarding, having just low morale within staff, and whether or not those resources are able to be fully accessed. And then for our communities, it definitely has an impact in that we have more individuals who are direct support professionals at those low wages that are having to access other public assistance programs. Plus, as individuals experience maybe more stress and they begin to exhibit more behavior, we also see an increased utilization of law enforcement and emergency services to meet needs that could otherwise have been delivered in a preventative manner for the individuals who are the waiver recipients. So clearly a lot of impact and a lot of difficulties and challenges associated with what we were seeing in the National Core Indicator Staff Stability Survey. So at that time, in early 2019, at that time, our division director was Val Hoon, and Val used that information to provide a lot of education for legislators and worked closely with our General Assembly in understanding the impacts and consequences of the workforce shortage and really began to advocate for elevating our rates to get services at a level to where direct support professionals could be living on or having livable wages and also increasing their credentialing ability. A lot of those early efforts that began in 2019, you're seeing occur this year in the governor's budget recommendations as Director Bax and others have been meeting with our House and Senate representatives. Also from that survey data, we understood the importance of really trying to embed some best practice training. Not only do we want to stabilize the workforce, not only do we want to create a pipeline, but we saw that there's a real need to ensure that staff are being well trained, that individuals are receiving services from highly qualified professionals. We wanted to look at credentialing and to develop some true career ladders that really help optimize the investments that we're spending through our public dollars, and to ideally be able to create a credentialing pathway and a certificate that would be portable to where the direct support professional could take it with them into other work programs and work settings. So from those surveys, In late 2019, the Division of Developmental Disabilities began to reach out to MAC-DDS and MARF to explore some early interest. Both of those trade associations and professional associations were looking at similar strategies to how to stabilize that workforce. Overall, as we began to work forward, what we wanted to do was ensure that first and foremost, we were stabilizing the workforce and creating a structured career pathway for direct support professionals. That way they have opportunities to grow within their workplace, and there's not this ever evolving door because of either difficult and challenging circumstances, having to work multiple hours, or being able to go apply to other places to get higher wages. Through Missouri Talent Pathways, we're also wanting to just increase the competency in delivering national best practices. We wanted to be able to standardize that training to where the training that's being delivered in Nottoway County, Missouri, is the same training that's being delivered in Iron County, or maybe the same service that's being delivered in Hickory County. So we wanted to ensure that across our 114 counties, that anybody participating in this would be having the same training. And when someone completes a program, they have a certificate that everybody across the state of Missouri will understand what that training and credentialing means. We also had an objective to ensure that we're developing practice in a way that mitigates risk for the individuals who are waiver recipients and receiving services, as well as risk for the employers. As I noted earlier, we wanted to make sure that this had statewide applicability and that the credential was going to be portable across multiple work environments. And ultimately, by stabilizing the workforce, we can increase the outcomes for individuals. We can all achieve cost efficiencies, and then we can develop that strong talent pipeline we need to get new workers into the workforce. So why do we consider a registered apprenticeship? On this slide, what you'll see is registered apprenticeship in the center. From the individual potential job seeker perspective, all job seekers are looking for a position that they can grow in, and one where they can feel value and be valued. From a community-based organization or any business perspective, businesses are always looking for talent. They need individuals to come in and apply for services. They want individuals that want to have retention, that want to continue to stay on the job and grow in the position. And they want to be able to develop talent that has that long-term vision to achieve some of their higher and more noble goals. Where those opportunities intersect from a community-based organization and a potential job seeker, those intersect with a registered apprenticeship program. The business value proposition for a registered apprenticeship program is, again, it develops talent pipelines. It broadens your applicant pool, as you'll hear throughout this webinar. It's an opportunity to connect relevant training, to really help individuals increase their overall employee skills. It's a way to paying individuals for increase in skills and abilities and develop a structured salary schedule. It's also a way to decrease errors and injury and other risks on the job, and the ability to create a competitive advantage over other businesses delivering similar types of programs and services in your community. From the employee, the job seeker, or the apprentice perspective, it's an opportunity to go to work and be paid on day one. It's an opportunity to ensure that you're getting purposeful and positive coaching, support, and mentoring throughout your entire workday and each day that you go to work. It's an opportunity to get a credential and to be rewarded for your accomplishment, both with a credential, but also through salary. And it's also an opportunity to where any prior work experience and work experience can be front loaded to minimize the amount of time that it would take to receive the credential. One of the things that I saw just this morning, and it was shared to me by Lucas Evans, who's our Chief Behavior Analyst here at the division, is he had seen a blog that was just posted, I think, yesterday. And as of 2021, the top 5 to 6 reasons that people separate employment are career growth, job expectations, safety, orientation, coaching, and feedback. Salary doesn't appear on that scale until the 7th reason. But one of the things that a registered apprenticeship does is addresses career growth. It addresses job expectation. It helps with orientation. it provides coaching, and it provides feedback. So this is something that even with just a recent research study that was published yesterday, this is something that meets those individuals' needs. And that's why we're so excited to have this opportunity to offer Missouri Talent Pathways and to offer this Certified Direct Support Professional Registered Apprenticeship Program. So I know I've used the term registered apprenticeship many times. There's many words that we all think that we have familiarity with, but this is just that opportunity to do just a little bit of a check to ensure that when I use the term registered apprenticeship, that we all have a similar concept. So a registered apprenticeship, it is a talent development strategy. It's not a new strategy. It's a strategy that has 80 plus years of history of success in the United States. It predates that. If you look at the European trade designs that date back hundreds of years, it is a career pathway for skilled labor opportunities. Again, a paid registered apprenticeship, you get paid on the job, you conduct training that occurs on the job, and then you blend that training with other related training that occurs through other outside sources. By a registered apprenticeship, that means that it is something that is nationally recognized from the U.S. Department of Labor, and that it results in a credential or certificate from the U.S. Department of Labor, Education and Training Administration. Also, with the apprenticeships, with different types of apprenticeships, individuals are able to earn college credit as part of the apprenticeship with little to no student debt. So with a registered apprenticeship, and I've lifted this graphic from the U.S. Department of Labor, but a registered apprenticeship is comprised of 5 key pieces. You have business involvement. It involves structured on-the-job training, having related instruction, reward for skill gains, and then a national occupational credential. So anytime the term apprenticeship is used, it has to fit these 5 areas and have these 5 components to be officially considered a registered apprenticeship program. So when starting with the business involvement, in our registered apprenticeship program, that would be our community-based organizations and agencies. But for the business involvement, again, it drives talent to them. It assists businesses with developing very specific skill objectives. They have to provide on-the-job training, coaching, and mentoring. They employ the apprentice, and then they also determine the wage progression scale. The second component around structured on-the-job training, what that means is there has to be hands-on instruction that's delivered by a mentor or a journey worker, which is someone who's trained and experienced in the profession. There's structured content on what must be delivered as part of that on-the-job training, that it has to follow national best practices, that it's been customized for the specific career and occupation that we're discussing, and that there are competency measures to evaluate when an apprentice has developed a particular skill. The third component that must be present for a registered apprenticeship is that there must be related training instruction. This is technical and academic competencies. It has to be provided by a provider, an education provider. That could be a high school, it could be a career and tech center, could be a college, or it could be an online learning management system. There's flexibility in how that training, formal training occurs, but there must be formal related training instruction that occurs in addition to the on-the-job training. The fourth area component of a registered apprenticeship is that there must be a reward for skills gained. So as someone goes through an apprenticeship program, they must be receiving more money as they progress through it and complete it than the wages in which they started with. So there's a defined salary structure, and it must be competency driven. So as you develop additional competencies, you begin to get rewarded for those competencies. And then the fifth component of a registered apprenticeship is the national credential. And so this is the national occupational credential that is issued from the U.S. Department of Labor. It's something that is portable, potentially stackable to where you could get other credentials, and something that is industry recognized. So overall, those are the 5 components that have to be in place, and it has to be certified and approved by the U.S. Department of Labor. So again, the key components here is that you're integrating mentoring with on-the-job training and related technical instruction that would occur by other sources other than the journey worker on the job. So now let's get into Missouri Talent Pathways. So this is our registered apprenticeship program for direct support professionals. So as I mentioned earlier, we initially started looking at this in the fall of 2019. The partners in this effort has been the Missouri Division of Developmental Disabilities. We've had technical support from U.S. Department of Labor, Office of Apprenticeship. We've worked with the Missouri Department of Higher Education and Workforce Development, Apprenticeship Missouri. We've also received technical assistance and consultation from the National Alliance for Direct Support Professionals and National Association of State Directors of Developmental Disability Services. Our work group members who helped us design this talent pathway were representatives from Missouri County Boards. It was Apprenticeship Missouri. We had community-based organizations, representatives from the Missouri Association of Rehab Facilities. We had institutions of higher ed on our advisory board, as well as family advocates. So we began in March of 2020 having our first meeting. And if anybody knows what 2020 means, that was the first year of the public health emergency. So even though we had our initial meeting in March of 2020, we really did not begin working as a formal work group until October of that year. Much of our initial work was completed prior to February of 21. And then at that point in time, we started vetting what we had designed with the National Alliance for Direct Support Professionals. We vetted it through the National Association of State Directors of Developmental Disabilities. We actually did a presentation to the National Governors Association. And I think our first presentation to the Office of Governor Parson occurred in April of last year. Based upon that feedback from all those individuals, we continued to tweak and revise and edit Missouri Talent Pathways to the point where we formally submitted it for approval about 6 weeks ago. So with the Missouri Certified Direct Support Professional Registered Apprentice Program, what we had to do was develop what we call a standards document and what's called an Appendix A. That Appendix A, and again, you don't need to worry about that specific term, but basically what we had to do is go through and outline all the competencies that a trained, what we would consider certified direct support professional would possess. We identified those competency measures. We began to work on what would be the skills that would need to be possessed as part of each of those competencies, kind of what those work processes were, and what type of specific training instruction we felt that ideal superstar of direct support professionals would possess and access. We developed different use cases, looking at what the outcomes of this would be, kind of what the workflows would be, our internal business processes, how we'd go about onboarding potential providers, looking at who all the actors and end users would be. And then we looked at where we already had ability, but also where could we leverage additional dollars. So those were all the activities that advisory group worked on over the course of about a year. So what that led to was an outline of our employer providers. So in the development of our standards document, in order to participate in this registered apprenticeship program, any potential community-based organization would need to agree to comply with what we developed as our standards. And so our employer partners, which is the registered apprenticeship term for our community-based organizations, in that standards document, we outline their responsibilities to include safety assurances, expectations of compliance with EEOC, how they will identify and determine the qualified trainers who would be considered journey workers. The standards document also outlines the periodic reviews that will occur, the ratio of apprentices to journey workers. We then outlined the minimum qualifications in that standard documents of what a potential apprentice would need to possess. Those minimum qualifications align specifically with our existing contract requirements and our waiver requirements. So we're not expecting any additional minimum qualification beyond age 18, having high school or equivalency, or having other related experience. As long as individuals possess those minimum qualifications, then they would be eligible for the apprenticeship program. The standards document also outlines that the probationary period for the apprenticeship is 3 months. Now, again, apprentices are hired and paid through the on-the-job training. So as an employee, they may have a different probationary period, but as an apprentice themselves, they would have at least a 3-month probationary period. And then the standards document also outlines the complaint procedures if an apprentice has any concern with the community-based organization who is serving as their employer partner. And as I noted, we also had to develop what was called our Appendix A, our work process schedule. So for the Missouri Certified Direct Support Professional Registered Apprenticeship Program, it is a competency-based program. It's a 1-year program, which means that an apprentice would need to complete 2,000 hours of on-the-job training and mentoring. That 2,000 hours is a minimum that Department of Labor would require for any career that you're looking at developing an apprenticeship for. So we do require 2,000 hours of on-the-job training and mentoring. And again, this would be delivered by a journey worker that the provider associate or provider organization would identify. And that journey worker could be any manager, supervisor, or trained experienced worker. Each community-based organization that chooses to participate, they will identify themselves who they feel would be that journey worker, and they would work with myself and other members of this team on identifying what that best ratio would be. The great thing about apprenticeship program is it's not just about new talent. Businesses that have existing employees that they would like to participate in this program, or if employees themselves want to participate because they would like to access the skill increase, the wage increases, as well as access the national credentials, they are definitely able to participate. At a minimum, an incumbent worker must be enrolled in the registered apprenticeship for 6 months. Again, if they've been employed less than a year, then that may be a little bit more than 6 months. But we just have to make sure that our total amount of hours is 2,000 hours. But if someone's been on the job for 2 years, at a minimum, they would still need to participate for 6 months. And I'll take just a little breather there. And Trace, is there anything you'd like to add to that 2,000 hours and incumbent workers?
No, the only thing I would add, like you covered with the incumbent workers, 6 months is what the DOL asks for, that they stay in Rapids for, even if they're sitting on several years of experience. That's just to cover the administrative requirement of in Rapids. Again, under special circumstances, we can make exceptions to that. The other thing I would like to just point out, if I can, going about the 2,000 hours, this is a competency-based program, and we understand. I don't know if we cover this later on in the presentation, but that 2,000 hours is a minimum. It can fluctuate clearly if folks are working part-time, or even if they're working full-time and just need more time to cover it down on classes or achieving the competencies.
All right, thanks, Trace. So the second part of the program that any potential employer partner would need to agree to is that we've identified the 15 validated competencies, and I'll share those in just a second. Those competencies are ones that align with the National Alliance for Direct Support Professionals. We ultimately chose those 15 competencies to be the work processes because they are nationally validated. They're evidence-based practice. There's research behind those being the ideal competencies. that a trained and experienced direct support professional would possess. There's another added advantage to adopting the NADSP 15 competencies, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. Just kind of in brief, by also adopting those, it does afford potential apprentices or employer partners to also collaborate with NADSP's eBadge Academy. And then apprentices could be completing the apprenticeship not only with the DOL certificate as a certified DSP registered, or excuse me, a certified direct support professional, but they could also potentially walk out with the NADSP level 1, level 2, or level 3 national certificate in addition. So those 15 competency areas, the way that those will be or will appear and would be measured on the job, and the way in which they would need to be trained is wrapped around 69 skill statements. And so when we talk about a competency area, most of those competency areas will identify 3 or 4 or 5 basic skills that need to be evident in, day out work in order to indicate that an individual has mastered those skills and mastered those competencies. The related training instruction, which has to occur, which again on the picture there on the right, that is the third component of a registered apprenticeship program. That related training instruction is 169 contact hours of instruction. Currently, we will make that all available through the Relias online learning management system. Again, one of the values of doing this currently through Relias is that NADSP also accredits the courses in Relias. So not only are we ensuring that we're accessing the type of training and content that we feel and the advisor group felt was important, it also aligns with training that has been accredited and vetted and approved by the National Alliance for Direct Support Professionals. And so what that means, again, is if individuals would want those certificates, in addition to the DOL certificate, they would be completing coursework that would count towards both types of certificates. Also outlined in our work process schedule is that in participation of this, that any apprentice going through this program would be paid at a minimum of $15 an hour. And upon completion of it, they are rewarded with at least a 10% wage increase. So any participating agency who would want to participate, they can always set their minimum base wage higher than the 15. It's just that it could not go below $15 an hour. So that way, any apprentice walking into any sites that will be offering this, they have an understanding at the very minimum, they will be receiving $15 an hour, and they understand at the very minimum, they will have a 10% wage increase upon completion of this apprenticeship program. And again, each business is able to set that higher if they desire. They just cannot go any lower than that threshold. And again, this is a completely voluntary program. It's not changing any of our requirements in the waiver. It's not changing any of our requirements in contract. This is just a program that's out there as a strategy for providers to utilize, for job seekers who want to work as a direct support professional to utilize. And if they want these formal certificates, then this would be the programs that they could choose. One of the questions we've received, it seems from the audience, is are mentors allowed to mentor more than one apprentice at a time? And what I will say is generally, yes, they can. I know Trace will talk about that a little bit later, but there is that ability to mentor more than one apprentice at a time. And I see that Jeff asked the question, is this something that we can build to offer in-house? Jeff, if you can provide a little bit more clarification. I'm not for sure if I have full understanding of your question on about the ability to build in-house. And if you can provide a little bit more clarity, we will come back to that question. So once a business has decided to be an employer partner and they've agreed to comply with the standards that I outlined earlier and to offer the training that we've talked about on the job, and an apprentice has been enrolled in the program and they've completed those competencies, they've completed their related technical instruction, they will get a certificate from the U.S. Department of Labor that looks very similar to this. It'll indicate that they are receiving a certificate as a certified direct support professional. So the 15 competencies that would be developed, and so these are the competencies that would have to be developed as part of those 2,000 hours of on-the-job training. These would also be the kind of domains or area of focus of some of the related training instruction. And again, these align with National Alliance for Direct Support Professionals. They're kind of bucketed into 4 broad domains around care, determination, professionalism, and community. So within the care domain, the competencies being developed would be around effective communication, crisis prevention and intervention, delivering person-centered supports and person-centered strategies, and then supporting individuals' health and wellness. Within this program, we have built the Med-Aid Level 1 into the registered apprenticeship, so that would fall underneath the supporting health and wellness. Underneath the determination area, those competencies that would be being developed are participant empowerment, how to serve as an advocate for the individuals that you're supporting, and how to build and maintain friendships and relationships, and helping the individuals that you're supporting build those. Underneath the professionalism domain, there will be on-the-job training and technical instruction around conducting assessments, kind of informal assessments, how to really go about facilitating services, how to assist the individual in achieving their own education, training, and self-development, how to be a positive participant within your organization, and then elements around appropriate documentation and documentation standards. And in the community domain, the certified direct support professional would be developing competencies and skills around community and service networking and how to engage and connect individuals with intellectual and developmental disabilities into their communities, competencies and skills around community living skills and support, and then also skills around vocational education and career support. So within that particular competency, that does fully encompass what we currently require for employment support professionals. So anybody who would be going through this registered apprenticeship program would be meeting all of the core DSP training requirements and contract. They would be meeting the Med-Aid CERT training. They would be meeting the employment support professional training, in addition to all these additional skills and competencies that would get them this national certificate from the U.S. Department of Labor. Okay, so where are we at currently? So we've developed the standards document. We've conducted outreach, and that's one of the things we're doing today, and as we've been doing over the last year. We've identified, all of our administration actors. We've approved the training instruction and gotten the input that we needed there. So where we're at today is we're ready to start onboarding partners. That registration process is a completion of what's called an Appendix D, which we will share in just a second. Once we have employer partners on board, then we are immediately ready to begin onboarding apprentices. We currently have about 32 businesses that have already expressed interest in becoming an employer partner. And so we'll begin that onboarding process as early as next week. Once we get those folks on board, we'll begin to connect those who have already expressed an interest in becoming a DSP and participating in this apprenticeship program. We'll begin to get those people connected with those employment partners in their areas. And currently, I think we have a list of about 23 individuals who have already reached out to me and are in our database of wanting to become an apprentice. Obviously, that's just the beginning. We'll be doing a lot of marketing out there, connecting with other entities, which we'll talk about shortly, on how to begin to develop that talent pipeline. And then as individuals get on board, we'll continue to look at implementation, refining any part of the practices, And then we will look at, how to go about expanding to other settings. Some of the things that I know that we are interested in wanting to do, and we already have interest, is having some of our community colleges in Missouri and some of our area career centers offering the related training instruction. So that way high school students could potentially be completing this as part of their last year of school. So that way when they graduate, they may already possess the related training instruction to where they can come into a potential employer partner with all of that training already completed and kind of front loaded to where they just need the on-the-job training. The other great thing about connecting this with career centers and community colleges, it does also open up the opportunity to access other financial aid. And with that, I'm going to pause here for just a second and catch up on some of the questions. And give me a second as I kind of scroll back through. One of the questions we received is, can participants be working towards a high school or high set degree during the apprenticeship? And that is correct. They do not need to come with a high school diploma. They can have a high school diploma, be working towards it, or we are also looking at modifying some of our existing language to where anybody who gets a CDSP would be deemed as meeting our training requirements. And so there may be the opportunity where they would not have to worry about completing the high set. But yes, people can start even without having that diploma or the equivalency. So Jeff's question, he's provided a little bit more context, is who will be facilitating this program, ourselves, or will there be outside people training this? So excellent question, Jeff. So any agency who wants to participate, they have to implement the competencies, the skills, the training and the instruction that I've just reviewed. So that at a minimum has to be delivered. So that's already been agreed upon. That's what was submitted from the Department of Mental Health to the U.S. Department of Labor based upon this advisory group's feedback. So that curriculum's already established. So the competencies established, the related training instructions established, and the skills that need to be possessed are established. Now, there are flexibilities in some of the related training instruction. Through Relias, there's many different courses that will meet several of those different competencies. So there are ways to customize some of that training and getting that related training instruction. The other thing is any employer partner or community agency who participates, they can always add on additional training. They can always add on additional competencies or degrees of skills. But it cannot go below the minimum threshold that we have identified and reviewed today. Another question is, our program provides shared living residential services using independent contractors. I'm wondering if they are eligible, or does this program apply to only employed staff? So Jeanette, excellent question. Currently, this would be applicable only to employee staff. So what we're wanting to do is help provider agencies develop a pipeline to increase the number of staff that they have available, to really elevate those skills, to reduce the turnover that we talked about early on, that was occurring at 55% in less than 2 years. We're wanting to stabilize that workforce and develop career pathways there, and really have that expectation that the apprentices, ideally would continue employment with the employer who's done the training for them. At some point in time down the road, we might be just looking at elevating the number of people who have credentials to go out and work in self-directed services or worked in shared living. But currently, it is about helping our provider agencies with really stabilizing their workforce and retaining employees and developing those career pathways. Tammy asks, will the state be providing incentives to participate? Can you share money associated with those incentives? And Tammy, I promise I will get to those. and many of the other presenters on the call will also speak to those. So we will come back to that. Laura asks, as a provider, we will receive project funds for the 10% raise for staff who complete the program, and then as the provider agency agree to continue to maintain the raise after the first year. And again, Laura, we'll get to that later in the slide presentation. Teresa asks, how would one be certified as a journeyman in the sense of completing the mentor part of the OJT piece? That mentor ultimately is self-identified by the agency when they complete their Appendix D. So on this slide, and you provided me a wonderful transition to this slide. In that Appendix D, it's one of the easiest forms that you will ever complete associated with state or the federal government. Basically, on that Appendix D, any interested site, they simply provide their agency's name, who their designated representative is going to be for their business, your business's address and phone number. You have to identify how many journey workers that you feel that you possess. And again, those are individuals that may be frontline supervisors, frontline managers. It could be trainers. If you're large enough to have specific trainers in your organization, it could be experienced employees that you feel, possess the skills and talents. And now you can always run them through the apprenticeship, but you don't need to. These will be ones that you self-identify on this Appendix D. And what we need is a count of those individuals. And then on the Appendix D, just identify the total number of employees that you have. So on the Appendix D, again, representative signature, name, address, phone number, how many employees do you have? How many would you identify as being your journey workers? And then you just identify, will the apprentice be given the opportunity to do the related instruction during work hours, beyond work hours, or both? And if they're doing the related instruction outside of work hours, you just have to indicate whether they're going to be paid or not for completing those courses through Relias or other training sources if they complete those beyond work hours. And if you're going to have wages higher than the $15 and the 10%, then you just identify what that modification to your wage scale would be. And that way we can upload it into our Rapids database. So that way future apprentices have an understanding for your site. Will they be getting paid for the related training instruction beyond work hours? Will they be given time during work hours to complete that training? What wages will you be offering them in your apprenticeship? So that's all information that we upload. So that way we can dutifully inform potential apprentices why one business's, what their expectation is with one business, so they know what to expect. Now, obviously for the apprentice, they could be comparing different sites and making choices based upon how these questions are answered. But ultimately, those 5 things are all that you need to complete in order to be a potential site. For apprentices, all they simply have to do is fill out name, address, phone number, social security number, answer a couple of demographic information, identify if they're a new employee or if they're an incumbent employee at that business, and sign. That's all it takes. And it's pretty easy from there. So some of the additional value, as I mentioned earlier, because we have aligned with NADSP and because we do have Relias currently as our primary mechanism for delivering the related technical instruction, which is at 169 hours beyond the 2,000 hours of mentoring. The additional value is if either the apprentice or that apprenticeship site chooses to pay $80 to NADSP, they could participate in that eBadge Academy, and all those coursework and all this would count towards the NADSP level 1, 2, and 3 certification. And all they would have to do is a little bit additional work of submitting files for review to get those national credentials. But incumbent within this design is all the courses that one would need to achieve that certification also. Another added value, and this is some of what Laura was referencing, and I can't remember the other person who had a question. So some of the value in this is, we will be working on creating access to Relias. That's part of the governor's budget recommendations. Also, as part of the governor's budget recommendations, that's still present, that will be finalized in the next 2 weeks from our General Assembly. Are dollars available to where, as the division, we would be looking at 3 different kind of rate enhancements based upon the percent of staff who achieve different training levels. That could be done outside of the registered apprenticeship, or it can be done as part of the registered apprenticeship. But if done through the registered apprenticeship, those individuals would already all automatically meet that level 3 training for that highest level of reimbursement rate enhancement that we're looking at. There's also the opportunity to access technical assistance to the Division of Developmental Disabilities. We are looking at contracting and bringing on board an apprenticeship coordinator whose sole responsibility will be to go out there and support agencies who do this, to go out and assist with talent acquisition and recruitment, and then to perform all the kind of performance reviews and to help upload and onboard potential providers and apprentices. Other additional values, as you will hear from the other partners, is there is the opportunity to access untapped workforce dollars. Many of our workforce programs have funding available to support apprenticeship programs. And then again, the other added value is we are looking at future program expansion to potentially assist with some incentive dollars to offset those wages that we have built into this program. So that's a lot of me. I'm sorry, I still have a couple more slides. Before I jump into this, I'm going to look through the questions and see if we're kind of caught up on questions. So Trace, one of the questions is there's still a little uncertainty how a new employer partner would already have a journey worker on staff if they've not gone through the apprenticeship program. Do you want to speak a little bit to that while I can catch my breath?
Sure. So if they're already on the staff, they're already experienced, they're already doing the job, they are the equivalent of a journey worker. Okay. Please remember, the Office of Apprenticeship does not promote people to the rank or the level of journey worker. It takes you to do that. It takes a master in their occupancy fields, someone that is an expert, a manager, a leader. You are the only ones that acknowledge who is at that level. What the Office of Apprenticeship does is help walk you through obtaining an apprenticeship completion. So in other words, it's possible to be a journey worker without ever having went through an apprenticeship. More than likely, you went through an apprenticeship of some sort. It just may not have been a USDOL registered apprenticeship. So we're not trying to come and judge if you have effective journey workers or intermediate employees at your place of business. You know that they're intermediate employees. You know that they're experts. You know that they're journey workers. They don't have to go through this program in order to supervise. What they would need to be is schooled up and have a good understanding of the work process that you all have adapted. And as this intermediate employee is going to scroll through there, they're going to recognize these tasks. Oh yeah, absolutely. Yes. And that's all we're doing. That intermediate employee, that mentor, is going to walk the apprentice through that process to achieve those competencies. That is what the 2,000 hours allows for. Again, the 2,000 is a minimum, certainly not a maximum, but that is the time frame that's been identified in order to successfully master those competencies and complete an apprenticeship as a DSP. Does that kind of answer that question?
Yep, I believe so. Obviously, we're taking questions that through the process, so we're just a little bit behind schedule, but we're kind of double dipping here by going through the slides and kind of jumping already into the questions and answers. So I think we're still okay on time. But just real quickly, and kind of there's 3 different questions in here that kind of have a similar answer. We do have a crosswalk of all the courses in Relias that are NADSP approved and would be approved as part of this, and we would get that out as part of that onboarding packet to provider agencies. You do not have to go into a different Relias portal. If you already have your Relias account, you can just continue to use that Relias account. And there is no recertification process. So once that apprentice completes the program and gets that certificate, there is no continuing education requirements. They get to continue to possess that certificate, moving forward. There is one other question in here, but I'm going to wait because I know we get to it in a future slide. So just real quickly on onboarding, we are going to be ready to begin onboarding our cohort 1 next week. Our cohort 1 is going to be comprised of those who are part of our advisory group. It's going to kind of be our pilot demonstration group to make sure that we've got all the processes in place because we're learning as much as the businesses are learning. And so that's one of the things that we had discussed with our advisory group was that they would be that first cohort to be onboarded. After that, we'll begin our second cohort. That will begin hopefully no later than May 15th, but it's somewhere in the neighborhood of May 15th. Just depends upon how long we take us to get the first cohort onboarded. That cohort will be comprised of those who have already expressed an interest. I have a data tracking of those businesses who have already expressed an interest. They've already gone through an initial interview with me. That would be our second cohort. And then from there, we'll begin to just bring on cohorts, as we have interest. So again, anybody who is interested, email MOTAP, which is short for Missouri Talent Pathways. Email your interest to motap@dmh.mo.gov. This really should be coming from an executive director or someone of your executive team, because that's who we're going to want to discuss this program with. So if you are someone who's a frontline manager and you think you're interested in it, I would just check with your leadership and then have them email that email address. We'll get them logged into our database tracker, and then we'll set up a call to further discuss the initial interest. We'll walk through in detail that Appendix A document, the standards document, address any questions, and then provide to them that Appendix D that would need to be completed. For apprentices, if there's people on this call who are interested in becoming an apprentice, all you need to do is email that motap@dmh.mo.gov. We also have a database of potential apprentices that we're developing. There's currently, as I mentioned, 20 or so individuals on that list. And as we get employers onboarded, we will match those apprentices with employers in those geographic regions that they have interest. And then from there, it's a matter of that employer and that apprentice identifying whether they're a good fit or not. So with that, I am going to turn it over to Trace.
Thank you, Dwayne. I'll try to keep my part brief here so that with respect to time. And I'll highlight, you did an amazing job, kind of covering all the basics of the program. I want to highlight a few things that you said. The theory of apprenticeship is nothing new. It goes back all throughout history. You can find it in antiquity, references to it. In our own country, George Washington went through a surveyor's apprenticeship. Ben Franklin went through a printer's apprenticeship. In 1937, the United States adopted the National Apprenticeship Act, also known as the Fitzgerald Act. We just celebrated our 85th anniversary. And the reason they did that is because the U.S. Department of Labor recognized the power of training through an apprenticeship, but it was highly unregulated or unformed. They wanted to design something that set an expectation, set some protections for the apprentices, and hence registered apprenticeship was born. It's not a magic pill, it's a process. This is why many of our labor unions, all four branches of our military, they adopt this because it's a plan that works. It's a process that works. The reason why it works is because DOL doesn't come up with this and say, here's what you're going to do. Here's how you're going to train a DSP. We wouldn't have a clue how to train a DSP. What we do is we start with a very raw set of standards, and then we get together with a team of experts in a think tank, and we dial it in tighter and tighter and tighter. We identify the competencies, and Dwayne and the volunteers from the employers that helped out with this, I was able to meet several. They just did a fantastic job. It's one of the best training plans I've seen in my time with the department. They really put a lot of effort into the success of this training plan. In order for the plan to work, I'm going to say this is an opportunity to put for senior managers to put real focus on their trainers. Their trainers, their journey workers, their mentors, their frontline managers, whatever you call them. This is that time. Those individuals that you're currently looking at saying, well, they don't have the certificate. What do I have to do to get them this? We build them in Rapids. They sit for 6 months. If we need to adjust that slightly, we'll make that adjustment on a after consideration on that. But basically 6 months is what DOL asked for. This also allows you time to go back to those competencies for that journey worker. Let's say they've been there for 5 years. They are clearly an expert in this occupation, but allows you the time as a manager to go back through and say, let's run through these competencies, make sure that you're 100% solid on all of them, and that you're comfortable teaching a new person, maybe a brand new person off the street. Again, apprenticeship is designed to where you should be able to grab most anyone off the street that has the trainability for this occupation and start them from day zero to intermediate level at the completion of it. That's the intention of it. If I had to sum up apprenticeship in one word outside of the word apprenticeship, I use the word communication. That is why it's successful. That's why it's really the reason employees leave their new job within a year, 3 years. One of the lack of communication, a lack of knowledge of the path to success, a lack of understanding of the expectations. This takes the guesswork out of that. If you follow the plan as it was designed, these have been the competencies identified of going from day zero to intermediate level employee. So the plan is the success without a doubt. The best laid plan is irrelevant without those leaders that carry out that plan. Without changing that process, obviously, not a lot, without adopting the process, it's going to be difficult for apprenticeship to succeed without the adoption of this new process. The other thing I would advise you on as hiring managers, as leaders, I would make the most of your time with the certificate. Participation is voluntary. You can leave at any time. I'm hoping that you don't once you see the value in it. But during your starting out with this, I would make a fuss about the certificate when you hire somebody new. I would say this is a wonderful thing that Department of Developmental Disabilities has put together. We have a chance to give a national accreditation, national certificate to our employees that complete this program. And I would make a fuss about it during their orientation. I would remind them that they're very fortunate to be considered to enter this program. I would ensure that they understand what they're getting into and the importance of it, and obtain that the highest level of commitment that you can at that time, that they understand they're working towards something very special here. On a positive note, some of the numbers that Dwayne threw out earlier, I want to just reiterate. The Department of Labor currently advertised that 94% of individuals that complete a registered apprenticeship maintain long-term employment, whether in their field of training or not. The fact is, what it takes to demonstrate the competencies to achieve a certificate, they carry through in many other avenues and aspects of their work life. 94% employability rate going forward. 97% of those that complete a registered apprenticeship are with that same employer a year later. After having completed the apprenticeship, DOL says 97% are still with that employer 1 year later, and the 89% are still with that same employer 3 years later. This is about the apprentice and mentor relationship is a bond. It's about building a common bond that is based on the foundation of communication. And last, I wanted to mention, I said an acronym earlier about RAPIDS. RAPID stands for Registered Apprenticeship Partners Information Data System. Big old long back, and there we go. Just data is my understanding right now, Dwayne, that that will be maintained at a centralized level, but possibly for the larger organizations, we will bring them on as users. If we do that, please know this is a very user-friendly system, and I'm always going to be available, easily reached via email, phone, or text to assist with that, no matter who is getting in Rapids. I will be there to help out with that. Program evaluations. After this program is a year old, I will go to Jeff City and we'll do a provisional program evaluation and just kind of look at all aspects of how the program is being run, study the success rates of it, as I know that there will be, and make adjustments from there. That might be a great time as you're running apprentices through this program. If you see something on the work process that needs to be adjusted or removed or added on that 1 year anniversary, might be a good time for us to make some adjustments there as well. Then I already covered the last point, making registered apprenticeship successful, the national retention rates. Again, an employee, an apprentice, a new hire, whatever title we give them, they're only going to see the value in this that you expressed. Some folks may have heard it. Maybe their mother, father, their uncle, cousin went through a registered apprenticeship and seen a certificate. Maybe they've never heard of it. The moment you introduce them to it, there's a good chance they're going to go home and type that into a search engine, and then they're going to see all kinds of good stuff that's attached to that name. I think at that point, they're going to see the value pretty quickly of what it is they're working towards. But again, I would just encourage you right out of the gate, make a fuss about this. You've got nothing to lose. I believe plenty to gain. We've got history on our side. We've got the numbers on our side that show the path up to success runs through registered apprenticeship. I would encourage you to make as much of a fuss about it during your orientations as you can. And I think that's about all I have, Dwayne, unless you want me to cover something else.
I am going to ask you to cover one other thing, but I just wanted to kind of piggyback on what Trace just said, because over the last 2 years, the thing that I've heard Trace say more than once is a registered apprenticeship is not a silver bullet to your solution. But what it is a strategy and a structure that's going to bring value to your new employees. It's going to give them the opportunity for growth. It's going to show your vision and business acumen. And if you embed and embrace the concepts and strategies, as Trey said, those national stats prove that businesses that implement this have a higher retention rate, a lower vacancy rate, and overall a more stable and trained workforce. But if all you do is complete the Appendix D and don't change the way people are trained, don't change the way that people are onboarded, then vacancy rates and turnover rates aren't going to change. I mean, by just doing this and offering a certificate is not going to change unless it goes back to opportunities of career growth, creating better job expectations, the orientation, the coaching, the feedback, the relationship between manager and their team. That's what makes a registered apprenticeship successful. The thing I'm going to ask you to touch on real quickly, Trace, is there's a question in the chat box about how does a business financially benefit from doing this? So we will talk about some of those other public dollars to support. We've talked a little bit about, but from your experience as a business executive and your experience with Department of Labor, can you talk about that return on investment and how the program becomes or pays for itself?
Well, again, without knowing the fast facts of how much it costs you all typically to run somebody through your program, it's difficult to know what it costs you when you lose somebody. To me, the benefit, the return on investment is the retention rates. And again, I know that the process works when it's employed. Anytime that I've heard concerns on a provisional with the new program that they don't feel like they're getting the most out of it, as soon as I interview a couple of apprentices, I realize why they're not getting the most out of it. They're not employing the same plan that they designed, that they were included on, and that they designed. If I understand your question there, Dwayne, the return on the investment is the improved retention. And again, once we start down this path, if a location is still struggling, then we're going to be available to kind of assist them and to go through it with them. Suzanne Richards, who hasn't spoke yet, is a fantastic outreach partner. If I have to, travel to a location and kind of sit through and look at how something is being employed and rolled out, it won't take long after interviewing a few apprentices and a few trainers to identify why a program may not work. Answer your question in terms of return on investment.
I think so, and you're breaking up a little bit on us, so we'll go ahead and transition. I know Trace has also talked about, and Suzanne can speak to it also, because I mean, there's literally hundreds, if not thousands, of apprenticeships already in Missouri, and between access to the workforce dollars and other programs, ones that Michael will talk about later also, but it's just that it's the amount of money that a business loses in constant recruitment, constant onboarding, constant training, constant vacancy rates, the higher wages for having to pay for time and a half or double time, that when you have that stable workforce, those business dollars are spent differently. So with that, thank you, Trace. And we will now turn it over to Suzanne with Apprenticeship Missouri.
Okay, thank you all. I appreciate it. Well, Trace just spoke to you from the perspective of the federal side in establishing and participating in a registered apprenticeship. I want to touch base on just exactly, how does Apprenticeship Missouri fit into this? And you'll see, I will note that registered apprenticeship is a federal program. So everything that we're doing in the state is to support and help grow, and it all feeds into what Trace and his associates do. So everything we do is to support them and developing and growing registered apprenticeships in the state. And you're going to see some of the things we've done here. We've established like a virtual office hour that we had where we trained up our people in the field so they'd be more familiar with how can they support registered apprenticeship with their programs. We have virtual learning platforms. We have the Missouri Apprentice Connect, which is only available to registered apprenticeship programs in the state of Missouri, but you are able to go online and register what jobs you have. Job seekers across the state will be able to see what positions you have, what's entailed. You're going to be throwing a much bigger net. And it's almost, we jokingly say, it's almost like a matching site for registered apprenticeships and employers. You can even see who is looking at your positions. And if someone looks good, you can reach out to them. Okay. So if we can go to the next slide. And so who is Apprenticeship Missouri? Number one, we are funded under the Department of Higher Education and Workforce Development. We have an Office of Apprenticeship and Work-Based Learning that's only been established just a few years ago by the governor. Our manager is Gina Caldwell. She is out of our Jefferson City office. Now you'll see this is the core team. So it's myself, Mike Chittum, Amanda Dirksen, and Chad Luchin. And I put my phone number in there because I'm probably going to be the one interacting with most of you in the field. And I'll tell you how I'm going to be able to help you. But this is our core team. But in addition to this, we have an entire network of partners that are poised, ready, and interested, have a vested interest in making sure that all our apprenticeship programs in Missouri are successful, have support. You will not be walking this road alone. You're going to have a lot of people that are going to work with you to make sure that this happens. So if we can go to the next slide, and that's how may Apprenticeship Missouri help you? Next slide. Registered apprenticeship in and of itself, you cannot find a downside. I mean, it is just a wonderful model, has, as Trace was saying, years and years and years of success behind it. But we also have to look at developing talent pipelines. It's great to have that program, but you have to have people coming into your programs. So, and we'll all say, this applicant pool, there's going to be a whole lot more people fishing out of a much smaller applicant pool. So what can we do to attract individuals to show them that your career path is one that would be something that they would be interested in? And we connect with our partners in education, workforce, and those entities that serve maybe typically underrepresented populations that we want to take a look at. So as far as education, we talk with our high schools. I go down and talk to students in 8th grade about registered apprenticeship programs to give them ideas about what's out there and what kind of exciting careers could be available. We're tied in with our career tech centers, which is awesome because then they have the sending schools and we have huge numbers of kids that come in that we have access to. Obviously, our community colleges and our four-year schools. We work through our workforce partners, the Missouri Job Centers. If you're not connected to them yet, they have programs for youth up to age 24, adults, dislocated workers, veterans, what Michael's going to speak about, vocational rehabilitation, our community groups and networks like our Nexus groups, and then our underrepresented populations, our TANF folks, and our skill up individuals. Because with the baby boomers leaving and with us not hitting the 2.5 birth replacement rate since the 1970s, we literally do not have enough people for all the jobs we have. So we're looking at every single person as a diamond in the rough and what can we do to skill them up. If you do not have contact with all of these talent pipeline partners, that's where I'm going to help you. I'm going to introduce you. You're going to have a person, a name. We're going to meet face to face. They're going to know what your expectations are, and that's going to allow them to deliver some of the services that we'll see on our next screen.
And I'll just jump in real quickly because Suzanne, I think many of the people on the call already work with a lot of those programs, but it's in helping the individuals they're supporting and getting connected. And that's one of the great things about this registered apprenticeship program is for each of our provider agencies and community partners, this is about you as the clientele and the support you get as a business in your staffing needs. And so I think that's the exciting thing about this is in many ways, people have been accessing those programs, but it's been for a different unit of population as opposed to the support and technical assistance and talent pipelines and other benefits that they can provide you as a business and not just in the delivery of your services. And so the ways that they can help you as a business is Suzanne's next slide.
Okay, and so this is where we're going to connect you to those points of contact to some of those partners that may help with recruitment through the Missouri Job Centers. Again, you may already be making job orders, but you can also utilize the Missouri Apprentice Connect by visiting with those folks and having an actual person, a point of contact, and them being familiar with what your expectations are. They can help vet those candidates on the front end, so you won't see anyone that they don't feel might come up to your level of expectation for an entry level. In many cases, if you hire someone that's eligible for one of our funding streams, you could get a wage reimbursement up to half the wages or more. Now, I will say in many of those programs, there are eligibility requirements for the person that you're hiring, but by meeting the person, that point of contact for that funding source, you'll know what the requirements are. Oftentimes, there are supportive services. Again, eligibility requirements are in place. Could be transportation, could be childcare assistance, maybe working clothes or shoes that they need, anything that might prevent them from being able to continue participating in the job successfully, to try to take away some of those barriers. And case management is also going to happen on the other side of these individuals that you might hire if they're eligible for one of these programs, because then those case managers are going to try to help them overcome any obstacles or challenges to keep them on the job longer. And some other thing, someone was asking about wages. Yes, in and of itself, normally registered apprenticeship doesn't carry dollars with it, but we try to make sure that we connect you with all of the partners that could have money available to support these activities. But also the state of Missouri is very, very active and aggressive in going after additional funding. We're just finishing up a grant, apprenticeship state expansion grant, where we had 800 slots to fill. They fill very, very rapidly. And by being a registered apprenticeship partner, you would be one of the groups that we would go ahead and actually, I think, Dwayne, you are part of that grant with us, but we are looking at ways to support you throughout grant writing. What we're looking at right now, because we do have maybe having to look at more individuals that might not be up to the standards of the rigors of a registered apprenticeship program. The grant they're currently writing is going to be very heavy on what we call pre-apprenticeship, and that is actually getting people ready to go into your registered program. And I think as when someone asked about return on investment, I've read I don't know how many times that if you look at every dollar that you invest in your effort and resources on an apprentice, you're going to realize $1.47 back in increased efficiency and effectiveness and in their quality of production. So they're the statistics that I've read over and over again. But we'll be here to help you. I'll go ahead and connect you however I can to make sure that you have these partners there, and we will. I'm looking forward to you becoming part of our state of Missouri and our U.S. Department of Labor partnership. In the state of Missouri, we enjoy a very, very unique and positive relationship. We all work together. We're all going in the same direction. So I'm happy to hear you all are jumping on this.
And Suzanne, just real quickly before I turn it over to Michael, just a ballpark number of existing registered apprenticeships in Missouri or businesses that are offering something similar. I know we're second in the nation. Is that correct?
Oh, well, yeah, I'll tell you what I've understood is when we started this a couple years ago, we moved up to number 2 in the nation in the number of new apprentices and the number of apprentices completing their program after we kind of embraced this a little bit more at the state level to try to assist our U.S. Department of Labor individuals. And while we did drop down, I think this last year to number 3rd in the nation for completing apprentices, we did move up in all the other categories, and I've been told that we are the only state in the union that is, or state in the country that is in the 10% of all of the benchmarks that U.S. Department of Labor looks at. So I'm telling you that because I've heard it. I don't know. Maybe Trace can tell us exactly how accurate that is, but I'm only saying that to say state of Missouri definitely embraces this training model, and we're doing everything we can to make sure that it grows, and our employers have the opportunity to grow their workforces, and our job seekers have the opportunity to have good jobs. We all win. We all win this way.
All right, thank you. And with that, again, we are going to be running right at 2 o'clock, but as we've been answering questions and answer throughout the call, I think we'll be fine to conclude at 2. And again, any unanswered questions, we'll get those responded to and posted on the website. So with that, let's turn it over to Michael with Veterans Education and Training.
Thanks. Appreciate the chance. First of all, I can't say enough as far as the general apprenticeship efforts here in Missouri. Great teams working on all these efforts for all you employers out there, having something that you can count on and offer your employees, and then they have something that they can hold on to literally and figuratively. That's awesome. So the GI Bill, go ahead, Dwayne. Offers can be used a lot of ways. The veterans can get a monthly housing stipend while they participate in apprenticeship with you. That goes directly to them. It doesn't have to flow through your budgets or anything like that. But it's really a nice incentive to get that veteran to sign on with you. So being part of the DOL apprenticeship, we can get that you signed up fairly easily. We'll work on those details as we go along. The veteran gets paid their stipend based on working at least 120 hours a month. Those hours have to be submitted. I think we're going to be working with Wayne's office on getting those things submitted. But again, it's an extra incentive to help that veteran start a new career. And again, it can be a big help as they get started with the job. Go ahead, Dwayne. So 120 hours, no commissions. Your employer must be approved. And again, by working with this program, that approval is much simpler, and we can take care of that. So go ahead. So there's my contact information. Again, you can check with me, and we can work on that. While we're excited to work with the apprenticeship, we can also look at other full-time permanent positions within your organization. So again, congratulations to the department for the work they've done, and this apprenticeship is going to be a great tool for all of you.
So Michael, we've got a couple of minutes yet. Do you mind discussing what that typical GI Bill monthly amount would be for veterans who are hired by our employer partners to bring on the program?
Right, it varies a lot based on their how much time they have in the service and that kind of thing, and also where they live, because it is considered a monthly housing allowance. But a lot of times it'll be around $1,000 a month. So it's a good, attractive thing. Now it does go down after the first 6 months of training. It will decline by 20%. You guys are building in raises as they go through the apprenticeship, and so that's the idea is as their wages go up, the stipend goes down a little bit. But like I say, it's not unusual for it to be around $1,000, or depending in the cities, it might be $1,200.
And again, that's money that would go to the veteran. So if you are, looking at trying to recruit new pipelines into the DSP profession, obviously that's an incredible incentive to, help a veteran, look at potentially coming to your place of employment.
As somebody mentioned before, I think Dwayne, you mentioned that the DOL apprenticeship is not magic, nor is the fact that you have the GI Bill incentive magic. But it's a nice, attractive tool that you can put in your job applications, or you can share during job fairs that you are GI Bill approved, and that will attract some attention from those veterans looking for a job.
All right, thank you, Michael. Sorry we pinched you here at the end, but again, beyond the content that we've discussed of what a registered apprenticeship is and what the Missouri Talent Pathway includes, I think it's also that thing of understanding that you're basically getting extenders. You're getting Michael and his program. You're getting Suzanne and her program. You're getting the technical assistance from Trace. And so you've got a lot of extra extenders to assist in implementing, refining, making it more successful, and then also with assistance and connecting with those talent pipeline partners. So a couple of things here in closing that I wanted to share. Since the governor's release of this on March, I believe it was 19th, we have gotten a lot of airplay about this. Advancing States has spotlighted this effort. On the right-hand side, RCPA is a provider association in Pennsylvania that has spotlighted what we're doing and reaching out to us. Bottom left is a news article from Missouri, and then in the center is also an article from the Missouri Times. Social media, I've just picked Governor Parsons' Facebook page, but it's been on many social media pages. But again, this is something that we did partner closely with his office. We did present to the National Governors Association. As Suzanne mentioned, Governor Parson is incredibly behind registered apprenticeships, so much so that he created the Office of Workforce Development. He created Apprenticeship Missouri. He has presented at national conferences on what Missouri is doing with registered apprenticeships and his concern about the direct support professional crisis and how he sees this as a great mechanism. So again, we've got the support of our legislators, we've got the support of our governor and all of these additional partners that you've heard from today. A couple of press statements just pulling out. From the governor, you can see here, again, the words he's had to say about Missouri Talent Pathways and the importance of this apprenticeship will provide Missouri businesses, the Missouri family. This quote from Val, our department director, again, is just a quote pulled out from an article for which she's been interviewed. And then on the bottom is a quote from division director Fax here at the Division of Developmental Disabilities from an interview which she has participated in. So again, I do just want to talk about that this is a big deal. We're getting a lot of interest. I think that there's going to be more opportunities to grow this. There's going to be more opportunities to support the businesses who choose to participate and the apprentices that do. We're constantly looking at leveraging additional dollars because, again, this is important for us to be able to stabilize the workforce, help DSPs, whether they're incumbent workers or new workers, to truly have a pathway where they're developing skills and getting credentials. So we do hope that this will achieve all those goals, and hearing the great successes that other businesses around Missouri have had and nationally with this, we want to be able to be a part of that. Suzanne did put in the chat box that currently in Missouri, there's 4,133 employers that are apprenticeship sites, and there's 14,520 active apprentices out there. Again, this is just the beginning. We're looking at continuing to grow and expand this, broaden the reach, and we hope that you all are wanting to go along these pathways with us. Again, this is me. This PowerPoint presentation will be uploaded. The recording will be there. If you have questions, feel free to email me individually or email motap@dmh.mo.gov, and we'll get your questions answered. If you are wanting to be on the database for future cohorts, again, email the motap@dmh.mo.gov, and we'll get you added. And anybody who I've already had email communication or telephone communication with over the last 3 weeks, thank you for being early adopters, and you are definitely on our list. And we will be moving forward with getting those Appendix Ds out to each of you. Also, just a little plug for our webpage of Missouri Talent Pathways. It's listed there at the bottom of the page. It's dmh.mo.gov/DEV disabilities /service providers /talent pathways. We will also be uploading this presentation and additional information and content to that page. So once again, I apologize for running 4 minutes over, but thank you to Michael, Trace, and Suzanne, and thank you to each of you that participated in today's call.